Morning. Today I'll start with a short reading from the Dhammapada. This is from chapter 23, titled "The Elephant." Just about two verses here. Eating too much, sleeping too much, like an overfed hog. Those too lazy to exert effort are born again and again. Pull yourself out of bad ways as an elephant raises itself out of the mud. For those of you who have heard maybe my last two Dharma talks on anger and repentance, you know that over the past several months, I've shared how I've been reflecting and exploring some of my own personal struggles with the three poisons, namely anger. So continuing this season of emotional introspection, more recently, I've been focused on one of the five hindrances and how that plays into all of these patterns and habit energies that I have. Sloth and torpor, or simply put, laziness. So there's many causes and conditions that give rise to laziness. Stress, fear is a big one. Be fear of change, fear of uncertainty, fear of discomfort, fear of failure, attachment to comfort and indulgence, avoidance, lack of courage, lack of interest, lack of ambition or motivation, and of course, tiredness and low levels of energy. So I know one of my unskillful habits that I've had for a long time is procrastination, making excuses and putting things off and always delaying things, saying I'm too tired to do that right now. The truth is, I'm not really that tired. I don't have time. I do have time. I just don't want to do it. I'll do it tomorrow. I won't. I'll start after the next equinox or solstice. I don't even know what that is or when it is. There's a famous Zen saying, thinking you have time is the greatest delusion. And these excuses often mask our laziness. And with a lazy body and mind, it's nearly impossible to cultivate the factors of awakening, as the Buddha taught in the Agi Sutta, also called the Fire Teaching, where he says this. He says, monks, on any occasion when the mind is sluggish, that is the wrong time to develop calm as a factor for awakening. Concentration is a factor for awakening. Equanimity is a factor for awakening. Why is that? The sluggish mind is hard to raise up by those mental qualities, just as if a man wanting to make a small fire blaze up were to place wet grass in it, wet cow dung, and wet sticks, were to give it a spray of water and smother it with dust. Is it possible that he would make a small fire blaze up? No. So what is the Buddha's antidote for overcoming this hindrance of laziness? Well, right effort or right energy. And I think something in now my about 14 years as a monk, I don't think I've ever talked about right effort or right energy, at least to the best of my memory. So there's two words in Buddhist Sanskrit that are often used when we talk about the Noble Eightfold Path. We talk about right effort or sama vayama. And vayama means something like exertion or striving or application of effort. The root yam means to extend, to stretch, to control. The connotations about specific and directional effort, the intentional application of energy to a task, about disciplined action towards specific goals. And the other source we often discuss in the context of the six paramitas, the six perfections, where we talk about vira paramita, the perfection of energy. Vira, this other word, means something like heroic energy or vigor. The root vira means hero or warrior. And early Buddhist texts refer to the Buddha himself as a vira, a great hero, the one who was victorious over the forces of evil, over Mara, and whose spiritual achievements would transform the world. You know, the Buddha didn't just wake up and sit under a tree. He walked away from the palace. He was not complacent or apathetic or lazy. He endured hunger, doubt, and fear, and his path was fierce, not passive. A path that took 6 years, at least in his last human life, actually took hundreds of thousands of lifetimes through countless eons and kalpas from his initial bodhisattva vow to the distant Dipankara Buddha. So Vira is about power, enthusiasm, and courage to persevere and sustain effort and practice. So I started asking myself, what is my effort and what is my energy? And I realized I felt like I didn't have a lot of either. So I asked myself again, why don't I have the energy I want to have, this kind of fire, right? So I came back to my physical condition. About 2 weeks ago, I finally just got tired of being tired all the time and realized I'm at my heaviest I've ever been at in my life and the most sedentary I've ever been as well. A lot of that attributing stress from work of not wanting, to do things and being overwhelmed in that way. Developed high blood pressure over the past 2 years and find myself not just overweight, but obese. As the Buddha said, I realized I'm a lazy, overfed hog. Right from the Dhammapada. So this paramita of diligence or vira, of energy, and the factor of right effort depend on physical energy. When the body's exhausted, inflamed, sedentary, unwell, the mind often follows. They're connected, right? In my work in the hospital, we often talk about the person, the human, as being, it's a combination of the bio, psycho, social, spiritual domains and dimensions, all these skandhas together, right? The physical state of the body influences our mental energy and thus our capacity to practice. Lack of sleep, poor diet, lack of movement, these create, for me at least, created this heaviness and fogginess and dullness, that hindrance of sloth and torpor. So further kind of build this foundation here and this connection, I went back to my library and pulled this book out, The Six Perfections by Dale S. Wright. It talks about each of the six paramitas, and I want to share kind of a excerpt that I put together on this kind of connection here. So he writes, "We have good reasons today, however, to be attentive to all the ways in which the physical grounds and supports the mental. It is incumbent on us to focus considerable attention on the truth that we exist as human bodies. And if we seek some form of transcendence, the image of perfection, then we should consider carefully all the ways in which cultivating physical excellence will provide grounds for the achievement of excellence in other domains. Although we can imagine non-embodied beings, angels or bodhisattvas, of a purely spiritual sort, that is not the way human beings have ever existed. Human ideals must therefore continually circle back to questions about our bodily form, provoking us to ask ourselves how we can most admirably take up the challenge of our physical existence. It seems clear to us today that long-term processes of evolution have gradually given rise to the increasing complexity of the physical being. Our bodies function as they do through a variety of complex systems, working in conjunction with one another: respiratory, muscular, digestive, circulatory, nervous systems, to name just a few. These particular systems permit us to process oxygen, move through space, digest nutrients, and centralize control of our lives through conscious awareness. To live as a human being requires that these systems and others, skeletal, epidermal, glandular, and so on, function effectively and in conjunction with each other. The achievement of excellence in any domain beyond the physical is fully dependent on a high level of function in bodily systems. High levels of physical vitality make optimal mental function possible. So, I'm deciding time to change. Last week, I hired a personal trainer, started a program to focus on this, and started on a structured and strict meal and exercise plan and regular fasting and tracking everything. And this first week, actually just did my first weigh-in today, down 6 pounds this week and 1.5% body fat down this week, with a goal on this program designed to lose 50 pounds or more by the end of the year. So Buddhist practice begins with the body, not the intellect. The very first foundation of mindfulness in the Satipatthana Sutta, very kind of core foundational teaching, Buddha talks about mindfulness of the body. In another sutta, the Buddha talks about there's one thing, monks, that when developed and cultivated leads to the attainment of vision and knowledge: mindfulness directed to the body. So taking care of our body helps ground our awareness in the here and now. When we neglect or abuse the body, mindfulness becomes unstable and energy fades and starts a cycle. And for me, because I was so tired all the time, I didn't feel like meditating. I didn't feel like doing my practice. And it was this cycle that kept happening. And realizing the body is our vehicle for awakening. It's the field of insight, of aging, pain, desire, and decay. And importantly, it's the mirror of our karma. Our habits are etched into our bodies. So a well cared for body supports sustained practice and deep meditation. The Buddha outlined right effort, sama vayama, elsewhere. He says, what is right effort? There's the case where a monk generates desire. Hear that? Generates desire. Endeavors, arouses, persistence, upholds and exerts their intent for the sake of the non-arising of evil, unskillful qualities that have not yet arisen, for the sake of abandoning of evil, unskillful qualities that have arisen, and for the sake of arising skillful qualities that have not yet arisen, and so on. In the Buddha's very last discourse, the Mahaparinibbana Sutta, the last words the Buddha spoke, he tells the monks, he exhorts them, all compounded things are subject to vanish. Strive with earnestness. The time of the Tathagata's parinibbana is near. 3 months later, it will utterly pass away. So the last instruction he gives them is to this right effort and this perfection of energy. So I began the talk with the Dhammapada. Chapter 2 of the Dhammapada is entirely devoted to the topic of vigilance. So you can read that if you have a copy of the Dhammapada, or look that up at some point. Maybe some of us have heard the saying, 1,000 miles begins with one step. Right? There's another Zen saying that I didn't actually hear, I don't remember hearing before putting together notes for this talk. If you want to climb the mountain, start at the top. This points to the mindset of already embodying the awakened state, of not hesitating, of not waiting. No more excuses. Start at the top. Our four great vows that we'll recite at the end of today, that we do every Sunday, right? All beings, one body. I vow to liberate endless, endless blind passions. I vow to uproot Dharma gates without number, without number. That's not a lazy vow, right? That's a vow that takes every ounce of courage over lifetimes. Our shout outs that we do when we practice, do prostration practice, that last one, do not waste your life. Another call to right efforts and perfecting our energy. Another famous uh, lineage holder in Zen, Bodhidharma, the founder of Zen in China, sat facing a wall in meditation for 9 years. And when asked why he did this, he replied, seeking the true nature of mind. And many thought he was lazy or idle, not doing anything, just sitting around. But it was a steadfast effort, day after day, without distraction or excuse, embodying this very essence of right effort and perseverance. His wall gazing was not passive staring, but active, radiant vigilance, unwavering commitment to wake up now, no matter how long it takes. Another famous rule that originated in Chinese Zen that's found its way to many different traditions and schools, including ethos in our Korean Zen tradition. The saying, "A day without work is a day without eating." And there's a Korean Zen proverb: "Even if you realize your true nature, you must still carry water and chop wood." So this outlook helps ground Zen practice in labor and commitment and right effort. When I was in Korea, as well as Papu, Sunim, and many others, it's very physical, demanding training that takes a lot of effort and a lot of hard work. I think this type of commitment and perseverance and unrelenting energy in the Korean Zen, contemporary Korean Zen tradition, was probably best practiced and exemplified by Venerable Songchol. Was a Korean Zen master, is a key figure in modern Korean Buddhism, and was recognized in Korea as having been a living Buddha. He was a supreme patriarch of the Jogye order and one of the post-war revitalizers of monastic Korean Buddhism. And he saw procrastination and excuse making as spiritual poison. And he had this reputation amongst monks. He was very famous for being a strict teacher. He was called the Tiger of Kaya Mountain. And when monks would nod off or doze off during meditation, he beat them with wooden sticks and yelling, "Thief, pay for your rice." The idea that these donations from the lay community and the monks' debt to society uh, and the duty to practice to their abilities. And kind of like Bodhidharma, part of his story is said that he had an 8-year practice period where he never laid down. Kind of hard to imagine, right? But again, that's the Bodhisattva vow, right? All the eons that the Buddha himself went through, these never-ending vows that we make, Songchol striving to embody and practice this. He also had a rule that nobody could visit with him unless that person completed 3,000 prostrations, which for some people takes about 8 to 12 hours to do that. And there's a story that even the president of Korea was going to, wanted to pay Songchol a visit. And he also required the president to do 3,000 prostrations, which the president did not do and gave up his opportunity to visit. And when Venerable Sungchul died, he had the largest funeral ever seen in Korean history for a monk. Over 100,000 people attended his funeral. So I want to share a few things that Venerable Sungchul, some of his messages on this topic here. This one about hardship. He says, the greatest disease of all is laziness. Misdeeds, immorality, and failure are all rooted in it. Laziness, in turn, results from the worst motivation of all, the desire for comfort. There's an old Zen saying, a day without work means a day without food. The point is that in order to achieve ultimate eternal freedom, you have to be able to overcome all laziness and hardship. This other one on unwavering resolve, where he talks about having tossed about in the sea of life, death and suffering for incalculable eons, we have been fortunate enough to take on a human form, and even more incredibly fortunate to make contact with Buddha's teachings. So if we don't redeem ourselves in this life, when will we ever have the chance again? You should have nothing less than rock solid determination, unrelenting resolve, and the courage to fight off 10,000 enemies by yourself rather than fail in your quest for liberation. And if you give your everything towards achieving eternal liberation and sacrifice your all for your Buddha nature, you will no doubt reach the goal of eternal life. Sungchul also established 8 precepts for monastic practice in this collection. I actually think picked up this book one of the times I was in Korea, actually. So I was glad that I did, and still have this and went back to this. The 8 precepts that he outlines for his monastics include renunciation, abstinence, welcoming contempt, humility, steady progress, hardship, ritual repentance, and altruism and service. So I want to share 2 of those about steady progress and hardship that he talks about in these rules here, these precepts. So steady progress. The object of practicing the 6 perfections in daily life is to reach enlightenment. And the quickest way to enlightenment is through uninterrupted progress and meditation. This progress must take place uninterruptedly during the day, during sleep, and even in dreams. You must not forget your koan, even for a moment. There is no room for laxity or laziness of any sort, for that will only prevent you from success for eons to come. Therefore, you must strictly observe the following. Do not sleep more than 4 hours a night. Act as if you were a deaf mute. Do not talk more than necessary. Avoid all reading and books as if you were illiterate. Do not snack at any time. And do a proper amount of physical work. And then hardship. The worst disease of all is laziness, and it is the cause of all misdoing, debauchery, and failure. It is the root of all misdoing because the motivation for laziness is comfort. People go to all kinds of extremes just to make this impermanent hunk of flesh comfortable. Why pamper something that is eventually going to betray you? All great successes are the result of great efforts, and the greater you overcome the physical realm, the greater your success will be. Edison said that his inventions were the result of efforts that included 20 hours of research every day. He did this for some 30 years and never knew a moment of grief during that time. The Buddha's disciple, Mahakashapa, was an outstanding ascetic and as a result was given the mystical insight of the Tathagata. Master Pai Chong, who established the Chan monastery system and its numerous disciplinary rules, said if you don't work for a day, you don't eat for a day. The point is that if you think as much as to let a fingertip rest, you will never achieve enlightenment. You have to toil in order to live. If you expect to be a freeloader and have others do your work, you will never make the breakthrough. Traditionally, monks would rather have been wrapped in a hot steel casing than receive free clothing from laity. They also would rather have swallowed molten iron than take free food. So never forget that if you don't have such resolve, you will never reach enlightenment. The iron law is that if you don't work for a day, you don't eat for a day. You must bear with and overcome hardships if you are going to achieve eternal freedom. Quite a lot there to reflect on. I'm tracking my sleep too, by the way. I got a few more hours than 4. But. So some final questions I'll just offer for reflection. What is one thing that you keep putting off in your practice? What does laziness look like in your life? Is it fatigue or fear or something else? What truth are you avoiding under the label of being too busy or too tired or not ready? And what would it mean to drop the excuse and take one wholehearted step? So with that, I'll end with Venerable Sung Chol's the first part of his daily prayer. May I, with resolve as solid as steel, practice fervently in each and every incarnation, and with great wisdom, virtue, and determination, melt away eons of obstacles and delusions.